What's up, everyone? I'm going to do my best to keep up with chat while we're doing this. We're going to keep it super casual, so hopefully things work out. Yes, we're here to announce the new CSGO update. Followed by, if we have time, we'll go over the new Minecraft update, I think.
Sounds good to me.
All right, so we want to try and keep this, like I said, as casual and as brief as possible. There's a lot of different things to talk about. A lot of people submitted a lot of questions. We've got them written down. Like I said, I'm going to do my best to keep up with chat, but I imagine a lot of you are going to be blasting questions and stuff. If time permitting, at the end of this, we'll do like a Q&A with chat where you guys will be able to ask questions. So if you ask a question in the middle of this, chances are I probably won't get around to it. And hopefully I'll remember what it was at the end, but just hold your questions for the end so we can get through our scheduled stuff first. As far as timing goes, we're going to try to keep this between like 90 minutes to 2 hours. I think we can get through it that fast. It depends on how deep we dive into some of these questions. So, without further ado, let's start. So you all know me, Mobius1, but this is a new face for the channel, Lordkator.
Hello, everybody.
There he is. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you do for a living, as much as you are comfortable telling everyone, obviously. You know, yeah, just go for it.
Okay, awesome. Well, first of all, I want to acknowledge I can't see the chat, so I don't know why. I've tried to open it in another channel and I still can't get the chat, so I have no idea what's going on. But I'm sure Mobius can share back whatever else anybody's asking for. One thing I want to acknowledge is, yes, I actually do have a life-size Darth Maul in my living room. And I'm a big believer in leadership principles, you know, let's just say that it permeates much of my life. I am a nerd. So my background, yeah, right. And my background is that you know, I'm a technologist and a business person who's been building systems and technology. I think the first time I bashed a keyboard was in 1980. So dating myself a little there. It's been a long time. Next year I'll be celebrating 40 years of coding. And
Nice.
but I'm also a gamer, and I really enjoy gaming. If you follow some of the stuff I write on the forums, you'll find out that I actually met my wife playing Star Wars Galaxies. It was that's a long story, but I'll just boil it down to I gave her creative meds and she sold them all and came back the next day with money and asked for more meds to sell. So
There you go. The way to a woman's heart is through crates of meds.
Yeah, right. It was instant love. I was a master doc in live trying to figure out how to make stuff go, and then we built a guild together. She was guild number 3 and everything. It was pretty crazy.
Cool.
So my background is tech and business, and I have a family and lots of kids and lots of grandkids too. So, and I don't know. I think that the interesting, I don't know if it's interesting or not, but I think one of the things that's different about me is I am very much a technologist, but I'm also a business guy and I'm also a product guy. And I really like solving complex problems for people using technology in ways that feels like magic to them.
Nice.
One of my favorite Arthur C. Clarke quotes is any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Cool. And that's kind of my life is about creating magic for people and having them enjoy it. And when it comes to games, that's something I've always wished I could do and actually pay the bills, but unfortunately, it doesn't pay the bills for me. Other stuff does.
Well, judging by some of the comments I get on my channel, I can definitely say that a lot of people think it is a little magical to be able to play a game as old as SWG, especially
Right.
after it's been shut down. So I think
Thank you
accomplished that
so
a
many
little bit.
Other people, I didn't. I mean, I've helped. Don't get me
Sure,
wrong, but
sure.
Some crazy people like TA and Oru and lots of other names that I could go on for an hour listing all the names. I just came in, the last couple of years and, danced around a little bit and got us organized. That's all.
Tell us how quickly, I guess, a little bit, your first interaction with Star Wars. Just did Did you see the movies when they first came out? I don't want to date you too much.
Oh yeah. No, you can date me. I'm an old man. I don't paint it on. It really is gray.
All right.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I said my first opportunity to see Star Wars. I can remember it almost like it was yesterday. My friends and I sold bottle caps or went around and collected recyclable bottles and everything, so we'd get enough money to actually buy the tickets.
I think we had collectible Pepsi cans.
Yeah, it was crazy, and we would go and get a quarter back for recycling or whatever, and then I had to brag my mom to take me to the theater, and she dropped us off because she didn't want to see this stupid movie we wanted to see, and we watched it, and then we watched it again the next day. And then again, 3 days later, like we went to go see it again and again, like multiple times.
Awesome.
It just blew us away. So, and that was me and all my friends. And then we actually made a movie, Star Wars kind of like movie, even with an 8mm film.
A fan film.
So
you made a fan film. Awesome.
Yeah. I don't have it anymore.
If that was your experience with the movies, what would you say your first experience with SWG was? Did you play when it first came out? Did you get into it a little bit later? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, my brother got me into SWG. He was playing EQ with his best friend and a couple other people, and he said, "Hey, there's this game coming out," and I liked playing things like Hexen and Heretic and Doom and all kinds of stuff like that, and I liked the idea of cooperative games where multiple people are playing together. So I was like, this could be interesting, playing in a game with a lot more than 5 people. And they got us into very early. I remember very early, like you could only like zone in. I want to say it was like TAT or something stupid like that. There was like very little things you could do. And then later on, we bought the thing, and then my brother and his friends said, "Oh, we should be on Flurry." That was my home server, and I made a character on Flurry. And me, my brother, and his best friend, as quickly as we could, got away from the masses. It's a massively multiplayer online game, and we went to Rory.
My starting planet was Rory, so that's nostalgic for me. What about SWG do you like that other games don't provide or don't scratch a particular itch?
I haven't yet seen a game that does a really good job of creating an extrapolation of the interconnectedness that is true about society and in real life. And I think that's what attracted me to it. In SWG, I built a guild. I had, I think, like 100 people in our guild, and we were all over the world. And one person had a division that was rangers, and they went out and got us meat, and had another division chasing down all the materials that we needed. And I was head of the crafting group, and we all crafted all kinds of stuff from I was big on the meds and other people on armor. And I haven't seen that since either. WoW kind of plastered over things, made it very you could do it yourself or maybe a handful of people, and then you could start raid content, in game. Maybe you needed to coordinate with people, but the interconnectedness wasn't there. And so I think that's what attracted me the most to SWG. And I mean, I think, look at where we are now. We're 15 plus years later, and 300,000 people registered at SWGEmu, and tens of thousands of them visiting on a regular basis and hanging out with us, all because of that connectedness that we felt.
Yeah. So you kind of answered it a little bit then, but what would you say your favorite thing to do in game is then?
Well, I'd say there's 2 things. I'm a big lover of Doc. There's a funny thing. I'll tell just a little funny story here. I played SWG, and I was a master doctor, and I really enjoyed the crafting. And I ran into my I didn't know it, in my future to be wife, and I were talking in game, and we were just friends, just whatever. And she was dragging me out into the world to go see different parts of the world. And then finally, at one point, I hugged her in and decided to be a creature handler. And so I played that for a while, and I enjoyed all that. And the reason why that's all funny is I went into WoW, and I was like so tired of being a healer that I decided to play a hunter because it was kind of like a creature handler, and then later realized it was the worst possible thing I could have chose to play in that. Never got in any raid because our pets were always a problem, and it was like, so it was kind of interesting that SWG led me down this path, and then I got destroyed. But so I would say I love crafting. I love, I liked running a guild. It's you have drama, you have to deal with people all over the world, you have to deal with time zones, but I really like working with communities and building communities is one of my favorite things to do. I've started 5 of my own companies and sold some, crashed them, and done everything you can imagine. So
wow, nice. All right, so we'll move on from a little bit about your more personal stuff to a little bit more project-related stuff, but still focused on you. So for those that don't know, how long have you been on the SWGEmu project staff?
Well, I've been in and out. I lost my original account to the forum disaster of 2000 and something. That was 2007, I want to say it was. But I was a lurker, big lurker, just kind of logged in and made an account so I could look around. And then in 2011, I came in and I joined the team and did some small stuff. Like I got shuttles working because they were like not working well. And I made some other stuff that just annoyed me that I wanted to get working, and my wife and I set up a server at home that I could play with to do all the testing, and then she was my QA.
Nice.
And it was fun. I just didn't really get, I didn't really, things in life were going on, a lot of other things going on, because I kind of floated away from the project, and I came back again in 2013. I'd been booted from staff by then, rightfully so. And then in 2013, I realized it was really hard for people to set up a server, so I started building back then what we called a fast track server. It was a VM image that you could just boot this image, and if you watched it, and would ask you all these questions, and pretty quickly you get a server set up and start contributing. And the dream there was, I felt like, I have, today, 30 decades of Unix experience, and I've been working on Unix systems since 1985. Yeah, 85, maybe even 84. And so, I realized that even for me, it was just a little tough. And for people that didn't have that skill set, it was even tougher. So I thought that'd be a cool way to help and contribute. I did that for a little while, and I did some other stuff. And then, life would have it, off the races I go. And I kind of floated away again. And then one day in 2016, I was playing around in my AWS account and going, why am I getting so many downloads in this stupid VMware that's like image that's like 3 years old in my S3 bucket? And it wasn't like super expensive. I didn't really care about the money. I was just kind of curious, like literally thousands of people downloading this thing. What's wrong with them? And I actually even found that there was a site that was downloading it and putting it up on BitTorrent, and people were pulling it from BitTorrent. It's like, wow, what is going on here? And so I went back to the forums just to kind of check out what was going on. People were just cobbling this poor thing together. There were like long lists of commands you had to type in order to get it to run the latest code. And I was so inspired by that I decided to create ZonamaDev. And I actually wasn't on staff when I did ZonamaDev. I was just like, guys, I don't know if I'm going to be all in, but I want to do this thing. I really want to make it nice. And I want to make it so that when I get hit by a truck or I inevitably give my atoms back to the maker, that other people can still use that and be able to extend it. So I wanted to write it in a way that humans could actually modify it and maintain it later.
Wow.
And that was the beginning of ZonamaDev, and 9,000 lines of bash later, I built that. And then over time, as I had built that, Pirelli started helping me, and then there was the disaster where poor TA spent, I don't remember, days without any sleep reconstructing a file system on Basilisk server where it went down for a huge amount of time, and I could literally just feel the pain and suffering. So I begged and borrowed and pleaded and said, listen, I really want to help you guys. And finally, at one point, it was kind of like, okay, well, what would you do? And I was like, well, what I would do. And and that leads to me joining staff again, declaring myself as a DevOps engineer, and really just focusing on cleaning things up.
Nice. So with we all know that everyone that works on the project is a volunteer. Everybody's got their own stuff going on in real life. Like you said, you've got a family and you've started your own businesses, multiple businesses. Yeah. So on average, how often would you say you get free time to work on the project?
Well, first of all, I forgot to mention that everything I say here is my own opinion, not the opinion of my employer. And,
good to point out. And also, I want to say, I was going to say this when we got a little bit closer to actually talking about the in-game stuff, but I'll say it now. We'll probably end up saying it again, that everything that you are answering with these questions is, of course, subject to change.
Yep.
For as far as in-game stuff goes.
Yeah. Who knows what? And timing is unknown.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I work for right now. I work for Amazon, and I used to work for Amazon Web Services, which was fantastic, and I'm a nerd, so we did a lot of fun stuff where maybe a lot of accounts got banned. We used some pre-existing technology that I was able to get my hands on for looking at stuff, and then built some really cool scripts with it, and Niffer went to town. And but so I did that for a while, and then I joined Amazon Advertising, and I'm a product manager there. And the reason I share that is that means my life is how do I say, it goes in surges, right? Like I just went through OP1, which is 2020 planning.
Sure.
And for the 2020 planning, probably working, intense amount of hours, not because they're bad people, it's because I'm super passionate about doing the right thing by my customers. And I've written this huge doc about where I think we should go and all these kinds of things. And I'm working with a lot of people. So that's very intense. So during periods like that, you're lucky that I keep the servers up. All the servers are set up to ping me. They ping in channel for other people, but literally they page me at 2:00 in the morning. And when I go in the forums and people say, hey, the server's
the login's
down,
down or something like that.
Yeah, I love it when I go in the forums and people are like, hey, the server's down. And no kidding, I'm not sleeping right now because of it. Thanks. But that was kind of my agreement for the staff, was that I would take over servers and I'd get them working, and I would take that pain and suffering off the TA and others to give them a little breathing room and freedom. And again, for me, that's fun. I enjoy servers. So it goes and comes and goes, and it depends. Like when I decided to do the big move to move all of our servers and put it on Kubernetes, I'd actually quit my job. And I had a couple of months while I was looking for a new job, and I was working 60-hour weeks easily during that period, on the project.
Yeah.
And then,
wow.
And then like this week, last 2 weeks I've been in an airplane every other day, and I probably, I've been doing a lot of work on a tool we call C3PO, which is a bot that gives CSRs a ton of power and a lot of great tools that they can use to analyze and ban people and identify things that are going wrong.
Nice.
So I've probably been this week, I'd say I want to say 3 hours, 4 hours.
Okay.
But my typical day is I get up at 4:45 in the morning, and then I'll sit down on my keyboard and try to bang out some code in the morning, or write, update some systems or fix things, and then I go to work, and if work starts at 8, then, well, I only get a couple hours. If work starts at 9, then I get an extra hour.
You're doing coding at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. God bless you.
It's my favorite time. Favorite time of day.
You already rattled off a lot of things that you've done for the project. Is there one thing you can pinpoint that you would say is your proudest contribution to the project?
I would say a close tie is the Namadev and our CI/CD.
Okay.
Our systems, there are still some rough edges, but I have a very high bar. I feel like our systems are really, really clean, super tight. I'm really proud of, I don't even know if people have even noticed, because over time I've been able to just get so many things done. Like every time we push to unstable, Nova updates. Midnight, that night, it pushes, it builds the whole server, shuts it down 15 minutes, gives everybody warnings so they can all scatter and run away, and then reboots with the latest version of code.
Yeah.
It does that completely automatically. I do nothing.
So are you behind Skynet then? Those Skynet messages, is that you, basically?
Well, I mean, it's not
you wrote
me,
it, right? You wrote it, but okay.
So
now we have a face to put to Skynet.
Well, no, it's not really my fault. It's probably TA's fault if I had to guess. But I do use those tools to automate our stuff. So I'm very proud of that. And Xenomadev for me, and I want to do another update. I know people are frustrated because there's been a lot of changes to the code base. They're all great. But Xenomadev, to be the reason why I think it's so important is that it really creates a space for people to play around. A lot of people run private servers. I really don't care. They're learning, they're having fun, and that makes me feel good.
Sure.
And, there's thousands of people downloading. I mean, I've seen thousands of unique IP addresses download Xenomadev. And I'd like to, if I got the time, to come out with a 2020 version of Xenomadev.
That'd be cool.
And really clip it down. I have some cool ideas for that. So I'd say Xenomadev and our development pipelines and our servers are probably the two things I'm most excited about.
Cool. One last question before we actually move on to some of the in-game topics.
Yeah.
Since you've been a member of staff and you've kind of been able to see the magic from behind the curtain, would you say your attitude towards the game or the community has changed at all?
I would say my attitude towards the game has only improved because seeing the community and being in it, it's very easy for people to get negative, right?
Oh yeah.
But I have tons of data that other people don't, right? Like when people bitch at me about this or that or whatever, some stuff I've been slowly sharing more. If you notice, but some of it I'm kind of 50-50 on whether it's valuable to share. But I have tons of data. Like the reason I started doing the in-game, I wrote the in-game email event notification program, right? Where you get those emails that says, hey, how you doing?
Yep.
We're going to have a load test. I wrote that. The reason I wrote it was less than 8% of our users use the forums.
Oh yeah, I believe it.
And so, to me, it was so obvious what happened to Sony was they watched the forums and listened to all the people that were, being super negative and then tried to figure out some way to, and they were afraid of what was going to happen with WoW and all this stuff. And they just could not let go of the fact that 92% of us were in the game having fun. I almost never logged in the forums, right? On the community aspect, I would say, it's easy to focus on the negative. And I don't let that happen.
Yeah.
It's just, there's no value in my life for hate. There's no value in my life for anger. All those things are just wasting my energy. And so there's no value in that. And every once in a while we'll get a troll. And once in a while, I'll lean in on them a little. I try to be very thoughtful about it. But in general, I think people are coming from a place where they don't have all the information. They don't know all the things. And therefore they come off with questions and whatnot. I'd say the other thing that's disappointing is, I give freely of my time to the community, and I was not on staff giving tons of my time to just make Xenomadev work and do other things. And it's sad when people take credit for other people's stuff, and it's even sadder when people start trying to point fingers at each other. The reality is we're all just creative beings, and we all have great ideas. And sometimes, I often say the difference between a great idea and an excellent one is execution. Like sometimes just different people executing in different ways, and you don't need to prove you're smart by taking credit for other people's work.
Sure.
So I think that's one thing that's a little annoying. Other than that, I usually take it well, and if I don't take it well, I have people in staff that I can bounce it off of, and if I don't take it well,
I know who you're talking about.
if I don't take it well with them, then I hang up the phone and my wife and I go for a walk.
Yeah, I mean it's also it's important to remember, for most things the vocal part of the community is usually the minority that is disappointed with something, whereas the people that are enjoying it, like you say, are in the game playing, not on the forums whining about it. So it's just how life works.
Sometimes I'll read something that I want to react to, and then I'll go take a walk.
Yep.
I mean, literally. And I've actually asked others to do that. If you see some of my writings, I will say, we're all here because we believe in the hope of Star Wars, and we love the connected universe that was brought to us. And, it's good. A lot of times I delete what I've written and write it again.
I've done that too. I've typed out whole posts.
The third time.
I've typed out whole replies to someone on the forums and then went back and was like, is it really worth it? Nah, just close. Close
not
it.
Worth it. Yeah.
All right.
So, anyway, that's fine.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, Sugar says, good life outlook.
I want to live to be an old man, so I don't want to die clenching onto hate and anger.
All right, so let's get into some of the actual in-game stuff that I think most of the people here are actually waiting to hear.
Sure.
A couple weeks ago, huge explosion on the forums. Whether or not it's your fault.
You're welcome. It's all my fault.
I didn't want to say anything.
I don't care.
JTL might not, probably not going to be part of 1.0. And as a reminder, everything we're about to talk about is subject to change. Nothing is final. Timelines, content-wise, this is all just, chit-chat for now.
Right.
What is, to the best of your knowledge, the current state of JTL?
WTF JTL. First of all, I think I'm going to give a little background on how we got here. I came into the project and a lot of people were tired, to be brutally honest. A lot of the devs felt like they were just cranking things out. Servers were kicking people's butts, crashes all the time, all kinds of annoying stuff to deal with. People hacking the servers and doing things that are annoying. And I focused a lot of my energy on trying to make those things, again, magic, and just make them go away, make it easy for people to do development, enjoy themselves, make it easy for me to write code and enjoy myself, right? Mm-hmm. And through that process, I started asking, well, what do we think is next? Where are we going? And, it just went round and around. And, there's, a handful of things we got to do. Maybe what we need to think about is, we got to think about JTL, probably the next big monster. And for a while, a couple of members of the team really banged their head against that. We did not share that externally, mainly because we didn't want to deal with the early days of, I'm running the latest version of Unstable and I don't understand. I can't, dock with a space station. We just didn't, we felt like we needed to get that base foundation in place before we would do any kind of release.
Sure.
And during that process, it became very clear that some things needed to be different. Some people have said what I'm saying on the forums is it's impossible. That's not what I said. What I said is we don't have people right now that are highly motivated to push through that initial investment that needs to happen in order to get over the top.
Yeah, get that ball rolling, so to speak.
Yeah, to get the base laid out. And because of that, we're kind of getting into a place where everybody was feeling like, gee, I don't know if I want to just hang out and wait till that gets done. And I'm not going to do it. Not me, I mean people in the team. And, we tried some stuff. We really banged our heads hard against it. I did not bang my head against it a lot, but a couple of people did that are very talented members of our staff. And we just started talking about it and saying, I just asked the question. It's probably my fault. I said, well, why is JTL part of 1.0? And, that's on dialogue about what we've always said, that would be a full emulation.
14.1, right?
14.1 at the time. And I'm like, that's great. But to be clear, like when it launched live, JTL wasn't there. And thousands and tens of thousands of people still played the game. And that kind of opened up a dialogue about, well, what could we do and how we go about it? And, we had a good conversation and came to a place where we felt like if we forked the road and said 1.0 was not JTL, and then we started building out a new official server, that would be fun for a lot of the staff, including myself. And we'd be able to get new content in place, some of the quality of life things that everybody complains about.
Daily.
And just daily, hourly. I don't know how many IMs we get a week, about 80 Ks. And
we'll get there.
And
we'll get to that.
I know we will. I didn't figure I was going to get out of here without being scathed with that one. But the point is that when it comes to the thought process was reinvigorating the dev team and reinvigorating QA team and people who want to make new quests and new content and all of that, and then being able to go to the next, and then have JTL still be something that could be coming, but not necessarily something we were going to commit to out of the box.
Sure.
So I have a number of flaws. One of my flaws is I'm extremely aware of communication and marketing, and when I build companies, I know what I want to say, and I have everything all lined up and 6 weeks of blog posts all pre-written before they come out. And so I kind of said, yeah, we need to communicate this. I'll start trying to figure it out.
A little bit more transparency
internally. Well, we started talking internally about what our plans would be. We started a vision document, what our beliefs are, all cool things that I plan to share, and all of us plan to share at some point with the community. And so the thought was we'll have like a big bang, and then we'll release a lot of this content and then engage the community. I don't know. I failed. I'm sorry. Somebody asked the 14 millionth time, and I answered.
That's really funny.
That's literally what happened.
I think it's a good direction where we're going. I've talked about it in the past. I made a whole video about, look at the benefits of it. Different people are better at working on different things. If you guys are going to be able, or you guys are going to take forever to put JTL out before getting to 1.0, there's no point in having people that don't want to work on JTL sit around and twiddle their thumbs waiting for somebody to show up and do it when they could be working on other things. So
frankly, they'll be gone.
Yeah, they wouldn't sit around.
We'll lose the talent.
So I think it's a good decision.
Kind of the nail in the coffin for
people
me.
Are going to be people are upset, but I think, like we talked about earlier, with the vocal part of the community being the minority, I think a lot of people understand where the devs are coming from with that decision and support it. I kind of wanted to. Go ahead.
I'm just going to say. So where are we going next, if you don't mind? JTL is not dead. But what it is going to be is I want to start a special interest group inside of the EMU project for JTL. I have privately created a channel somewhere. I'm not going to tell you where. And you know where, because you've been invited, a handful of you. And and that channel has current staff, devs there, some other people from QA that have been thinking about this. And what I'm trying to do is to create a crucible, a place where we can work together to understand, do we have the talent, the commitment, the ability, do we understand, have we really thought through the problem set, and how can we get moving? And then once we've come out of that crucible and we have an idea, then we'll share. So it's not over yet. That being said, it's tough. I have a handful of people that have raised their hand and convinced me that they could probably pound out some of the code that needs to happen in the beginning. And those people have lives. And some of them can only give me a couple hours a week right now. And we had a big burst of activity, and then the channel's been very quiet for a while. But I want you to know I haven't given up. I don't want people to think that this is just, I said something in the forums post about, that JTL wasn't my thing. I don't want people to think because it wasn't my thing that I don't care. I do care. I care about everybody in the community, and I care about the game. But it just means that Carl won't be writing a lot of JTL code, right?
So
I'm just not interested.
You brought up the special interest group. I had this question a little bit lower down on my list, but since we're already talking about it, for people that are interested in possibly joining the team or contributing, where would they go, or how could they get into that special interest group?
Best way to do it is probably hit me in Discord or hit me on the forums privately. That being said, my life is about to turn back into craziness, and I am going to travel some 40,000 miles in October. So I'll be a little random, so just have a little patience with me. That being said, those are probably the best ways. I've already had some outreach. We don't need QA yet for JTL. I don't need people who can write quests. I need people who are comfortable with C++, or at least, some level of C, and are going to be willing to learn and dig through a code base of, hundreds of thousands of lines of code, and going to be supported by a lot of us. It's not like we're not going to support them. We just need somebody that's going to wake up, a couple times a week and push that
Sure.
rock up the hill a little bit, right? And I might end up writing a bunch of code when I get inspired by somebody who can show me that. It's just that initial piece that just makes me want to cry a little bit and doesn't inspire me.
So for now at least, like the average person, there's really nothing that they can do to contribute. You kind of need people with that
Not
specialized knowledge. Okay. So once we get to that point, where people can come in, community testers and that sort of thing, we're just not there yet. Okay.
Yeah, the goal would be if the Crucible, I almost think of it like planting a seed, right? If we get the seed to grow and I see a couple leaves stick out of the dirt, then we'll set up a JTL server that people can play on and test with, and
I can't wait.
know that it's going to be as horrible or worse than Nova has ever been in its whole entire career as a server. And it'll crash constantly, and it'll auto reboot whenever a new push is made. So it's just going to suck for the users, but it'll be a place for QA to be able to quickly test things, and we'll do all that. I mean, I'm comfortable that we can embrace and hug a JTL SIG. That's why I proposed it. But it's going to have its own energy, and it's going to have to grow. I'll put the water, and I'll provide the dirt.
Are there any aspects of JTL? This is one of those topics where your answer is obviously subject to change. But would you say there are any aspects of JTL that we could see partially implemented with 1.0, like the ability to use a starship to quick travel from one planet to another, or even just flying around in space without fighting? Or I think the big one that people want is to be able to go into space in a multi-passenger ship and kind of use it as a space house.
Party bus.
Yes.
Party bus. Everybody wants their party bus. So I call that JTL Light. And it has been discussed at length. The current thinking on that is we're kind of in a place where if we do JTL Lite in the 1.0, unstable becomes, SWGEmu-1.0 branch or whatever. We'll have to figure out how we actually branch it. But the problem is then you'll have this dangling chat problem where, you'll have part of the game implemented, but part of it isn't implemented. You can get all kinds of people posting, bug reports that I can't do this or I can't do that. There's all kinds of weird edge cases there. And I'm actually more of a fan of having it be a Big Bang type thing where we the reason I kind of like this 1.0 no JTL is it's a line in the sand, and, it's the WoW Classic. Basically you could say, here we are, right? And phase 2 is bang, JTL comes out. I think if you just pepper little pieces of JTL out over time, it might not make a lot of sense. But that's just my opinion. There's certainly other voices behind the scenes, and at some point we'll engage more actively with the community and try to figure out where we should go.
Awesome. I think that's all people wanted to hear. I mean, you make a strong case having, like a set release, like, hey, here it is. It's not, like you said, sprinkled out over a long time where people can come and go, get tired of it after a couple months of playing with it.
Or they play a little bit of it and then they just get burned out. They can't go any further. It's really annoying, right?
And then they might not come back when the other pieces get added in. That does make a little bit of sense. Shipwright. If we decide that JTL is not, it's going to be a Big Bang kind of release thing, as far as Basilisk is concerned, Shipwright is in the game right now. Do you guys have plans to just leave that in there as kind of like a JTL light ground game variant, or do you think that's something that might be removed?
I think we'd want to sort that. I think if we're going to have an official post 1.0 server that evolves over time, we might back that out with the idea of JTL being a flashbang and a whole bunch of exciting stuff. I think it might be driven a little too as this JTL SIG group starts to grow. If it seems to grow, at an inch a week, then I'm going to have a very different attitude and really push for a completely different kind of way of approaching all this. If it starts to grow at, a millimeter a week, then it's going to be 5 years before JTL comes out. We'll probably have a different approach to it.
Because actually,
I'm sorry to be vague, but that's just kind of my thinking.
It's understandable. And actually, I didn't even have this in my notes, but I just realized Celestin and Athorian were added to the game with JTL. So if Shipwright gets pulled, maybe those races too? I don't know. Worth discussing in the future, right?
I'll get my 20-sided dice out, roll it, and let you know what comes out.
Of course.
Some of these decisions are really hard, and we won't have a lot of data on them, right?
Well, the last thing on JTL, this was something that I planned on saving to the end, but somebody asked about it in chat earlier, so we might as well just include it here. How can you comment on other servers or, server already having access to JTL? As being as vague as I can on that subject, what can you say about that?
On that? I've talked about this on the forums openly. There are people who are leveraging assets that are not their assets, and we do not do that. Period. End of story. And there are people who think that because a thing might have leaked. There was a case a number of years ago in Germany. This is true, by the way. I wish I could have found the link, but I guess I could share it. But there was literally a pipe going through a guy's apartment behind walls or whatever that was literally beer going from a factory to a bar. And the guy installed a tap. I mean, who wouldn't, right? and he was drinking the beer. And then later he tried to defend himself by saying it was leaking, that the pipe started leaking and he was drinking the beer. And then he decided to put the tap in, and where do you cross the line between a leak and stealing beer? And I think that's important to think about. And I'm a technologist, been building technology for a lot of years. I also was an executive at Warner Music Group, and lots of artists wouldn't be here today if Napster kept going the direction it was going to go. Sorry, I know that probably pisses people off because they think music should be free. I think music should be free when I can go to the grocery store and put a bunch of groceries in my cart. And when I walk up to that little girl at the cash register, she says, "Hi, how you doing? It's free. Go ahead." Until then, we need to pay our artists. We need to pay people who do these things.
Is that a feature coming? Is that a feature coming in 1.0? We can all do that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Subject to change, of course. Subject to change, but for now, we can look forward to that.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like, so if everything was free on the bazaar, then we wouldn't have an economy in the game. So I think that's important. And also the reality is that I've heard people say, oh, the source code this or the source code that. First of all, the way source code systems work, you have revisions and you have revisions. And I understand there's copies of that out there somewhere, but it's NGE. It's not pre-CU, and because of that, nobody ever got the pre-CU code. And I have spoken to individuals who are highly of authority, and they said, yeah, when it all fell apart, it was just sad. Like, people just left, and all kinds of servers were turned off, and nobody knew what was on them, so they formatted the drives. And so that original pre-CU version of the code, it's out in the bit bucket in the universe somewhere. There's a black hole that maybe one of us will fall into and run into it on a disk, but it's not there. And so,
but even if you did find it, this project wouldn't use it.
Because again,
you're doing it all yourselves.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea of this project was to emulate the original server. So, and that's the only way we're able to keep that bright line between where we are today. We don't leverage other people's assets. We try to do our best to be very, very careful about that. And there's some learnings there, but it's really hard. You go down the slippery slope of, hey, I've got all my Napster songs on my iPhone. I'm going to play a song for you. Maybe you can figure out the guitar riff in it. Well, and I'm across the room. Like, where do you end up violating the creativity and the ownership? That's the question.
Now, I know a lot of people already know the answer to this, but just to get it straight from your mouth, how does owning a copy of the CDs legally allow people to play on the SWGEmu servers?
Well, this is an interesting space we're in. It still hasn't completely resolved, but judges time and time again have been supportive of the idea that if you were able to digitally download all the files and you purchase the rights to using those files for yourself, then you should be able to use those files. Where it's got awkward is over the last decades is this concept of it's basically junk without the server. And there's actually been some lawsuits recently where judges have said if you're in a museum, in a physical property declared as a museum, you can play anything, really, historical.
But you have to be on those physical premises.
You have to be on those physical premises.
I remember that.
It puts us in an awkward place because we're not. But it's certainly a space where, I paid $59.95 for my copy. I have like 4 copies of the disc myself, I think. And, I got the discs and the art and everything. And for a while, they allowed you to download all this stuff online, which put them in another really bad position. That was a mistake on their behalf, by the way. I won't go into details why, but that was a mistake. And so that gives the user that right. It does not give me the right to use somebody else's code and their engine, right? We have to build our own engine. So, anyways.
All right, we're going to move on to Suncrusher, which I think we talked a little bit briefly about yesterday. May not be the final name to be determined. It's still up in the air thing. Can you say anything about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, probably more stuff that's my fault. I just seem to be a pain in everybody's behind. I keep asking internally, what is Suncrusher? And we get, if we've got 8 people on staff, we get 30 different answers. And, and so at one point I said, so the truth is we don't know what Suncrusher is. And the community doesn't really know what it is. Everybody, look on the forums. I mean, there are fights over what it is. And so I just was like, do we have to call it that? Like, really? Why don't we just call it blah, blah, blah?
So you're saying there's a stigma around the name that's kind of been building over the years of people just kind of arguing over what it should be. So just ditch the name and make something new completely. I don't think people care what it's going to be called.
People are tired of Suncrusher 2009. It was a long time ago.
What would you say if we're going to leave JTL for a post 1.0 launch? What really is left before we're at 1.0?
Well, I mean, if you go to SWGEmu.com/roadmap, you'll see the link that's on the forums. We talk about it all the time. Most of it really is going to be like the crackdown, gambling, newbie droids. We need to get the AI in place. We got to get the AI in place to be able to support that. I'm actually kind of excited about those because I personally would like to do some stuff to extend newbie droids to make them a lot more fun for people. And then Deathwatch Bunker probably needs a little love and a couple other things like that. Bioengineer is something on my personal task list because some people were passionate and tried to fix it and unfortunately weren't able to get it fixed. And I haven't forgot you. There's a thread out there somewhere where I said I would try to get my hands on it. And so there's probably some of that. I actually have dreamed about the idea of scrubbing every one of the professions, but it would take me the rest of my natural life to finish that.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's quite an undertaking.
But anyway, so that I think that I think we're close, super close.
Cool. What kind of, and again, third reminder, everything we're talking about subject to change. What quality of life changes can we expect as of now going into Suncrusher? Like I'm talking about limiting tunes for accounts, doing a reverse on the solo group payout buff or nerf, sorry, or like changes to the way the GeoCave works with the Acklay control, that sort of thing. Are there any ideas other than those that we can see in the server ideas section?
We have no ideas at all.
Okay.
We're actually completely lost. Actually, my opinion is that everybody should be able to just log in and have a blue frog in their inventory and call it a day.
There you go. You've heard it. You've heard it here first. 1.0.
No,
everyone gets blue frogs.
I could just see everybody's going to cut that little piece of that video out and play it back 100 times. So, the reality is that we have a lot of discussions internally. The first thing that I'm pushing for is for us to have a set of tenets that talk about what we're doing. And I'm kind of stealing some of the things that we do at Amazon for product building, an FAQ to talk about what frequently asked questions and tenets about how we will make decisions and kind of a press release about what we're doing. And I want to share that with the community and get people to react to it. And then I would say certainly quality of life things make sense. That being said, please, when you suggest ideas, read postmortems by Raph. We have talked to Raph multiple times. We even had a session with all of the staff at one point, and I've talked to him. I've sent emails back and forth, and even told him I was going to do this interview. For all I know, he's lurking at the moment somewhere in here.
Oh, I'll go through chat and see if I can find him.
But he's a busy guy, and the conversations I had with him were fantastic because he's like, dude, that was 15 years ago. You want me to remember how the defense rating on AR or whatever? I don't know. And
come on, man, you built this.
Yeah, right. And he's like, and you want me to get a hold of somebody who still remembers that stuff? They've been doing real work since then. All you crazy people still try to figure that out. So, postmortems is cool because it kind of teaches you some of the challenges and some of the thinking that he certainly had and experiences he had with MMOs and MUDs and all the other games he's done. And then at the same time, I would say that the reason why I bring that up is quality of life is an interesting term. I could just give everybody a blue frog.
Yeah, quality of life goes way up with that.
Right? But there's also the reality, the sad reality of humans is that we need to suffer a little to value a thing.
Yep, I agree.
And there's a great Star Trek episode about that, right? Where, and even in Matrix, he talks about how the first version of the Matrix was a complete failure because it was utopia and all the humans killed themselves. There's just something about us, and it's not a game if we can't figure out some way to fight it, to conquer it, to learn from it, to bend it to our will. So I would say quality of life things that violate that as an underlying tenet may be challenging, but things that where clearly there were mechanisms in the game. Raph has told us there were certain mechanisms where well, why didn't you do this? And then he was like, I don't know. My dad's told me that would be hard. Since then, he's learned to code. He writes his own games now. I'm really excited to see what he does in the future. I can't tell you anything. But the reality is that when you think about that, some of these things were just done because it was back then and it was on Pentium 3 servers and there was a lot of challenges even to try to implement some things. I'd like to see those things go away. Also, I'm not a big nerfer. I believe that people respond very negatively to nerfing. I like rewarding. So I would love to reward at the keyboard rather than just nerfing people that are not at the keyboard. It's a version of the game. That's fine. And that was the way the game was designed in the beginning, mainly to keep people from, giving up on their subscriptions. And that being said, Raph had said one of his primary tenets was that he believed that people should be able to play even if they had a lot of hours in a week or less hours in a week to get things done. And that's why things like harvesters and other things like that were in the game, was to give that some balance of power for people who can play 40 hours a week.
Makes sense.
And then people like us, that have to work and only play, 6 or 7 hours a week. So I'd like to see some balance between those things, and I'd like to see some rewards for people who are buffing at the keyboard.
I think that would be great.
I'd love to see, rewards, but even, for all kinds of things that you're doing and you're sitting at the keyboard when it happens. And, we have lots of ideas around that. And I'd love to, banter with and debate with the community. That being said, by the way, I don't know if we're going to cover this later or not, but I just want to say it right now. I am not excited about being on a server where we vote for every single feature. I won't be here. I'll be gone.
Okay.
So, if we're going to, I want mystery in the game. My wife has an idea for a very interesting quest line that will be different for, entertainers. They'll be able to do the same thing as a fighter, as a crafter, and I love it where her head's going, and because she desires that too. And I want to have some mystery in the game. I want it to be fun for everybody. And if we're just going to vote on the lowest common denominator and the only things we can all agree on, then it's just not going to be fun.
Okay. So as far as those things, they're on the table still, and you guys just haven't really spent much time looking at choices yet.
No, I wouldn't say that.
Okay. All right. I won't
We've
push it
spent
anymore.
Lots of time looking at choices. We're just not going to implement them.
Okay.
And I'm not going to talk about it here.
All right.
Mainly
that makes
because
sense.
I don't want to confuse people. What I don't want to do is I want to make sure. I feel
it's
bad
all right.
about the JTL. No, wait a minute. I want to say something that's important. I feel bad about the JTL thing because it's not my style. My style is usually much more deliberate in the way I communicate, and I feel like it just kind of blurted out. And I want to be very thoughtful because people put a lot of their energy and their life into these things. I'm deeply tied to the characters I create in games and the places I decorate and the cities I make, and I am. And so I can't imagine other people are any different than that. So I want to be thoughtful about that. That's why I'm so paranoid about our servers. If you guys know, we had a rollback not so long ago, and it was all of a handful of hours, and that was because of a massive amount of paranoia in me and the way I set up all of our systems so that we could roll back, because I hate losing people's time. It's horrible. So I don't want to confuse the dialogue by getting it out too soon without us. I want to get past or really close to the end of 1.0.
All right. Vet rewards. I'm pretty sure this is going to be a short answer, but when 1.0 happens and we get a new server, are people going to have to be started fresh from 0 days, or is their account creation date going to have anything to do with vet rewards? How's that going to work?
Well, vet rewards. I think we should just give them to everybody. No,
with the blue frogs. They don't,
right along with their blue.
They
frog.
don't need vet rewards if they have a blue frog.
First of all, when selling a game on a monthly subscription, what is your primary goal? I know I piss people off in the forums when I say this, but what is your primary goal?
To keep people around as long as you can.
Subscribe.
Yep.
Right. And that's what vet rewards were designed for. They weren't designed to reward people who are actively participating in the community. And so my gut instinct is I would like to reward behaviors that show people are actively participating in the community. And I don't mean you kept, and I don't mean you kept your bot running for 500 hours and now you get an ADK.
Speaking of ADKs.
Damn.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna get away with it.
Nope, you walked into it. Go ahead. I'm not even gonna ask. You just talk.
Darth, could you please talk to them about ADKs?
ADKs, go.
So I think it was a desperate, poorly thought out idea on Sony's behalf. And I think it needs to be addressed. It, along with the number of character slots, which was delivered on our behalf. It's not like an accident. And probably the resource crate. Those are probably the three biggest things I think we need to address. And, if I had my way, they'd be a decoration on your table.
I think a lot of people agree with that, actually.
So, I got really mad recently. See, I don't do everything when I get mad. When you guys piss me off, I don't always tell you I'm mad. I wrote a thing that would allow me to turn them on and off on Basilisk. Like literally, I could change one line, one config, and they would just stop working.
Even if they were already applied to an item.
Wouldn't matter. It just completely would make them null and void. And
Beautiful.
I almost pushed that code into unstable, and then I stopped. So that's how mad I got one day.
We're getting an OMG do it in chat. So there you go. I think a lot of people actually would be in support of that. I know you and I briefly talked about alternatives, maybe making them like no trade.
You know why I didn't do it? Is Basilisk is is a beast of its own. What a properly named server. You know, it has been through years of torture and abuse, and it has vomited up all kinds of legendaries and toys that everybody wants to keep, and it's because of edge cases and bugs and problems, its economy is completely melted. And, you know, I'm not going to fix it with one whack. The whack I'm going to fix it with is going to be RM negative FR. That's going to fix Basilisk. And until that happens, making little tweaks on it's just not going to make a difference.
We mentioned briefly, like I said yesterday, talking about possibly making ADKs no trade items so that you would get one to use per account, and that's it. Obviously, you could use it on something, and then if you get another item you'd rather use it on, you could take it off and put it on that.
The problem I have with that as a suggestion is that it will incentivize awkward multi-accounting behavior where people are going to do weird things and try to get multiple accounts going. And I would have to think through it a little bit more, but my gut instinct is that they just need to die. But again, I'm not in charge. I certainly have a voice, and the community has a voice too, but that's just my gut instinct. And there was a question, by the way, that went by in chat about Suncrusher being released in stages, like Pub 1, Pub 2, or will it be released as 14.1? You know, I would say that you're thinking about it in a very different way than I am. You know, the official server that will be the SWGEmu server when it's released will start at the end of what we would call V1.0 for SWGEmu.
Cool.
We're not going to do Pub 1, Pub 2, Pub 3. Like, there will be publishes, there will be new changes, there'll be new updates, but it'll start at minimum there. The real question I have is whether we'll even start a little further down the path and then let people in. So.
All right, I know a lot of people are asking or putting suggestions or questions for stuff. I don't want to spend too much time talking about future server ideas, because I believe it could bring you or somebody else back and have a whole nother interview live stream just talking about future server ideas, and I'm totally up for that. But I'm going to try and keep moving. Real quick, character transfers. That's something that came up, and I think you discussed an idea that you had as far as transferring stuff. Go ahead.
So, again, back to the craziness that is in MMO is that personal sense of identity that we have for our characters. And I mean, look at us two weirdos. We've got, when I look at the picture, I've got you and you got me. Like, what a bunch of weirdos we are, right? And you know, the reality is that projection of me that I play in the game and when I'm playing on character means a lot to me. I would like to find a way. Well, let's just say I know how to. It's just a question of whether we will have the energy to do it, to allow people to be able to save their name potentially, and potentially be able to save their appearance. That being said, you're going to have to be an active member of the community, and you're going to have to do some stuff to get there, because I don't think it's fair that people who wanted to have a name back years ago when they came to the game and it was already gone because 300,000 people have come and gone, and and the person who has that name and has basically locked it down and hasn't played since 2011.
Yep.
That's just not going to happen. No value in that. And if you don't use that reserved name in a very rapid time frame, I think what WoW Classic did, it gave people 10 days, was it, or 7 days or something like that to reserve their names. You know, too bad, Jack. Everybody can get the name.
But there's no chance, absolutely no chance of anybody seeing any sort of like house transfer or inventory transfer or bank transfer over to a new server. That everybody's going to be starting pretty clean, right?
I think that would ruin it, right?
I totally agree.
The game.
Yeah.
The only thing I feel a certain amount of sadness about is I used to have a couple people in my guild that were geniuses. There's a person in our community, I forget, recently did a tour of his place, and he had all these.
I know where you're going. I know where you're going. Save that. We'll get to that. From yesterday's talk, I already know where you're going with that.
Well, maybe. But my point is that part part of me wonders, like, could we let those properties be transferred, but all the items would be not pick up and there'd be no value to them? It could just be something that could be decorated. I don't know. That's a real stretch. I can hear TA screaming at me already.
All right, we'll move on. This was a suggested question. I don't know how much you want to talk about it or not, but just since somebody suggested it, is it possible we'll ever see Rage of the Wookiees or Trials of Obi-Wan content once the new server comes out?
So you know what's interesting is, gut flow. That's what we're talking about. I agree. Unbelievable, right? So that's something we've been talking about. You know, Raph, we had a staff conversation with Raph a while ago in our Slack channels, and we asked him that question about kind of what would he do about expanding content. And he was deeply concerned about spreading people out too much. He really felt like, if you read postmortems, you'll read that he designed the way the geometry of the banks are in the NPC cities, how annoying it is. You have to kind of slither around to get in there, because he was always hoping that people would just kind of congregate there. So he has a deep desire in him as a creator to create spaces that pull people together. And when you add a bunch of new content, especially early on, you're just giving people, you're pulling people apart. You're
spreading the population too thin.
Yeah.
Big problem with a lot of the private servers. Go ahead.
Well, and it's a big problem for us. I'm worried about, what do we do as a community? And I've even, thought about the idea of unlocking planets, like literally only launching with 1 or 2 planets, and then all the community will have to get together and do stuff to unlock it. There was a really interesting way that I want to say it was Burning Crusade, but in order to open the portal, all these crazy things in WoW had to happen, and everybody had to get so many, silks or whatever, things like that. I've debated on something like that. Again, I'm not committed to it. It's just a thought. The idea that I really want to empower all of us to be a community and feel like we're doing this thing together, and we're all leaning in and learning and growing and leveling our characters and unlocking, and then a big party when we unlock a new planet or things like that. It's just a thought.
Cool.
But I don't think I want to see us immediately throw content in that spreads people out. Like I've seen on the forums, people have suggested, just double the size of the maps. Why don't you just double them? I mean, in today's world, it wouldn't, blow up the computers and the clients could handle it. Has anybody seen the heat maps that I've done? Yeah. You don't want to spread people out any more than that. Look at those heat maps. It's a little bit worrisome, to be honest, right? And so I built those heat maps because of that conversation, because somebody said, hey, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I wonder what that would be like. And thus came the heat maps. So.
Will the team that, first of all, let me ask this. Do you know of any of the current staff members that plan on sticking around and working on the new server post 1.0?
Me and my wife.
That's you pretty much. I understand you probably can't speak for anyone else besides just you two, but figured I'd throw that out there.
I mean, there's. I can tell you that.
Wallander says in chat that he will be too.
Hey, I'm not going to speak for other humans.
Okay.
Inappropriate, right? But let me be clear. The reason that I believe this is an important thing for us to do is because if we don't do it, we're going to end up with people burnt out and tired and bored.
Yeah.
And frankly, I mean,
that's kind of why I'm asking, because I know, or I've heard, that a lot of people already are burnt out.
My wife and I met in the game. She loves me. I'm an obsessive person, as you can tell. Frankly, sometimes I think she's kind of tired too. But then she gets a spark in her about, I'd like to, what if we could do a quest like this? Or we do kind of, all the sparks I see in our staff are about a future, not about the goal. I want to be clear. The most impressive thing I think of as a product manager and an engineer is that we chose pre-CU as a target in 14.1, and we were hard over about that.
Yeah.
I was very impressed with that, because that's allowed us to progress to levels nobody could have ever imagined, because scope creep comes in,
Yep,
and you
absolutely.
can never get beyond it. right?
When the scope
And
keeps, a lot of people don't understand that, but
can't
very important.
complete a bridge.
When the scope
you
keeps
cannot
changing,
complete a bridge without knowing where the other end of the bridge lands.
Yep, it's a
if
good
you're
analogy.
just building a bridge to nowhere. And so I think that was the greatest and the smartest and wisest thing. I don't know if TA or who, I don't really actually know who to contribute that to, but whoever did that was brilliant. And that being said, that's a big reason why I'm trying to get internally our North Star and our beliefs and our tenets and where we want to go, because I want to be able to say, okay, we generally know this is where we want to go. And every time we want to do content updates or changes to the system, I want us to be able to say, is that still our North Star? Do we still believe that's where we're going?
Yep.
And if so, then do it. If not, park it as a good idea for the future.
Got it.
And so that's kind of, does that help? I mean, I'm interested if we get to move on. If we don't get to move on, well, I'll move on.
Speaking of moving on, this is another one of those things where you may or may not have much to say, but I'm going to ask anyway. Does the team have any idea whether or not they'll be willing to use any ideas or maybe co-develop new content with people running some of the private servers that are out there?
Yeah, so I have a couple things to say on that. I touched on it earlier, and that is that I contribute more to this project than I ever have taken credit for. You guys have no clue. Like if you're on staff, the staff members who are here right now can tell you crazy amount of things I do, and I just don't care. It's nobody's business what I do. I get things done because I believe they need to be done. I don't care. And the reason I bring that up is that we all actually in some form are contributing our creative minds to the ongoing thing that is this game that we all fell in love with. So I'm happy to invite people to contribute. I am not going to be excited to be in a place where everybody's egos come out and they start jumping up and down and saying, hey, I built that, or I did this, or I did that. The reality is that the difference between a good idea and an excellent one is execution. Yeah. I've started 5 companies and all of them seemed like good ideas. They were excellent over time and some of them died. But at the end of the day, I'm totally open to collaboration.
Cool.
You know, but if people are going to be passionate about this, right? They're going to be like, oh, blah, 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 and you're completely, and I'm open to debate. I'm very excited to have that. But at some point, we're going to have to make decisions and move on. And if people want to join, great. We're going to probably have features that look a lot like other people's features. But, you know, we're not going to steal things from other people without giving them credit. But at the same time, I mean, let's take house backup. No kidding. We will have a house backup. Yeah. But it probably will be implemented differently. And, you know, things like that as an example. But I don't want people to feel like we're out to steal from them.
It would be nice to see, you know, some of the developers that are out there doing their own thing because they knew they couldn't do it on Basilisk due to the strict scope, come back to the main project and help develop Suncrusher to be named now that they have that freedom. But I hope that those people are out there. Last question I have about the potentially new server is steps that you've taken for multiple account monitoring. We talked a little bit about this yesterday, and you shared a couple interesting things. I know you can't say too much. We'll respect your privacy, but what can you say about multiple account monitoring?
Well, I used to build data centers for small companies like Western Digital and networks for companies like Disney and Paramount Pictures. Please don't talk to me about IP addresses. It's the first thing I would say in my deep Darth Vader voice. And that's because I can promise you we do a lot. Just a couple days ago, we banned 54 accounts because somebody tripped across one of my traps, and Niffer just had a party. I mean, we went nuts in that channel. And I've been building more and more tools so that when they find a thread, they can pull the thread and it just unravels. You can see all the people that were involved, all the connections and everything. And I'm doing that because when we get to the new server or servers, that's a conversation we haven't had yet. When we get to that space, I'm going to be a lot meaner than I am now.
Cool.
I'm actually almost like Basilisk is a test ground for a lot of the tools that we do have.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's almost kind of good that people don't realize how much I actually do know. And the ones that are egregious, we are taking action on.
Good.
But that being said, let me be clear. I'm designing lots of things. Other people on the team have designed things. We're all designing different ways to approach this. I could get around all of them. You know, I had a friend of mine who used to be a repo man, you know, taking cars,
Yep.
you know, and picking them up. And he said to me, a determined person can always steal your car. The goal is to make your car just a little bit harder to steal than the one next to it.
Yep.
And that's all I want to do. I just want to make it a little bit more annoying and make it frustrating and have people realize that, yes, they could lose many years worth of their stuff if they screw around.
And obviously it's a difficult thing to talk about because the more information you give, the more hints you're giving people to, you know what to look for or what traps to avoid. So let's just move on.
I could say that, you know, there are tools. Some of the stuff is kind of leaking into the code. I used leak. It's unstable.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the future of the Basilisk server.
Yeah.
Right out of the gate, alternatives to wiping.
Dear sweet pea.
Do we have any alternatives to wiping the server? Because I guess we should start with...
Well, as Vlada says, you should always wipe from the front to the back. You need to be... When we do that to wipe, every time we wipe Basilisk, we always wipe from the front.
Let's start with what the original idea or original plan was, and then we'll talk about alternatives to that plan.
Well, my understanding, I wasn't here. The original plan was going to shoot it in the head, was my understanding, right? They were going to just destroy the server and wipe it.
Okay.
And that may still end up being the final solution. But I have been wondering, because I have this deep empathy for people like Veplo that just destroy their lives building amazing stuff. Is there a place in here for us to make Basilisk maybe into a museum? Like it's read-only. I could really trim down the amount of storage it needs. I could trim down the amount of CPU and RAM it needs. I could run it on a slice off to the side. And, you know, you log in and you get a nice full-speed speeder, and you can run around, and maybe even you get, you know, the ability to jump the waypoints or something. I don't know. But when you log out, your character gets deleted within an hour, and you can't interact with anything, but you go visit stuff. I don't know.
So what we were talking about earlier with all of those houses, like Veplo's museums or whatever, or if maybe prior to 1.0 we get like a couple weeks to build monuments in cities, like statues, maybe. Or, you know, write thank you letters or whatever, and put them in our house so that other people can find them. Potentially,
I find the digital world an interesting place. I won't go into it here, but I've been touched by the long-lasting presence of people that may not be with us anymore, and in digital spaces. And because of that, I also kind of have that feeling. I mean, if Sony had given me the ability to download my houses and my city and all of that stuff, I'd have it on a hard drive somewhere right now, right? So it's just one thought. You know, we banged it around internally. Nobody's committed to it. The other thing, of course, would be just to have the biggest, raunchiest, crazy week of destruction and mayhem, and just burn the thing into the ground.
I mean, that's kind of what they did when they shut the servers down, right?
Yeah, I want to make it fun.
What about like shutting it? Like, what about killing the server, but maybe putting the database open for people to download and run locally? Is that even an option?
385 gigabytes.
Okay, I mean, all right.
I mean, and just booting her takes 100 and something gigs of RAM.
No, kind of related to this. We were talking a little bit yesterday about people discussing server costs. How much less, you know, roughly, would it be a small amount or a large amount if you were to go about this museum idea? Cut back on the amount of like RAM and stuff that Basilisk uses.
Here's the most fascinating thing. Nobody bothers. I have the entire architecture. You know, Vlada helped me get it posted back when I redid it and everything, and it's on the forum. our infrastructure. It's 2 monster computers and a little guy that I use as my my Bastion host and my management server, and I run a couple VMs inside of that on that box. But our footprint is very optimized today. Number one. That being said, I could launch a couple more servers without too much horror and pain. We could reduce our price. We could reduce our cost quite a bit if we collapsed everything into one server. But that would mean forums, databases, Nova and TC Prime would go. I could never do TC Prime and Basilisk on the same box. All of the other services people don't think about, like support and so forth. There's some 28 or so services that we run that could all be piled up on one box, but then you'd have lag.
Yeah.
Basilisk already has some issues with save lag right now. We're fully aware of that, and TA, bless his heart.
Oh,
is
rubber banding.
that.
Rubber banding is a feature.
Yeah.
It's 14.1 compliant. No, don't worry about that.
We're working on it anyways.
That falls within the scope.
So when people think they call them servers, I call them galaxies. And when I launched like the Pit, it cost us nothing. That server is just a galaxy. It's a handful of processes running on a monster box that has the forums running on it. The bug reporting runs there. All of our bots for all the different systems run there. I mean, like it's costing us nothing. So it's not that easy to super optimize as people think it is, and
Gotcha.
We're not wasting a bunch of money.
Okay. So another alternative is with Basilisk is once 1.0 is ready, just leave it running. What kind of impact on the community do you think just leaving Basilisk, letting it go, would have?
There's two sides. Yeah, there's two sides to that. Number one, it is a beast, and I really want. One of the beauties of TC Prime is that, basically the dev team and all of us were talking about how annoying it is to test things, and then somebody said, gee, it would be great if we had all the data of Basilisk and ran all of its code in an isolated environment where we could test all these crazy ideas. That's where we did our load tests, right? And I was like, okay, sure. And 110 hours of my life later, that's how long it took me to write all the scripts and code and everything and test to do it. I did count that time because I was watching. I was very curious to see how long it would take me. And when I was done with that project, that became TC Prime. When we get to a new environment, I will always want to have that test environment where we can test the data with the new code and verify that we're not going to break production. So that would make us, it would put us in an awkward place to keep Basilisk going because of the size of it. If I could trim it down, not talking technical, I'll talk community in a second here. If I could trim it down, then that would be, that might be possible, but it is a beast. I have some ideas, and TA has some ideas on how we could trim that down. Now, the other side to it is, we're going all the way back to the conversation with Raph. Do you need 18 planets or 9?
Yep, right.
Right. If you launch another galaxy and you have all these planets in it, and you spread people across the 2 different galaxies, then what? So I don't know. That's a hard one for me. Like I've half wondered, what if we just put it in stasis for a month, so we get everybody really jump in and have a lot of fun together, and then we decide. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different things we could do with it. People are saying, talking about leaving Bass running would break the shrinking community. You sent me an interesting graph.
It would bifurcate it.
Yeah, it would basically split it. I guess this is a perfect time to show this graph that you sent me. I'm going to put this up on screen now. You don't mind, right?
Go ahead.
Okay. So we're going to put this up. Explain what exactly this is. So it's some sort of like bar graph. It looks almost like a stock exchange.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what are we looking at?
This is active accounts on. Well, I'm going to call them active users. I'm not going to tell people what this really is to me, but this is active users on Basilisk.
Okay.
And you could
we see dates at the bottom. Yep.
Pretty significant drop off on August 27th.
Before we get to
really
that,
sure what happened.
Yeah, let's. When was the what day did the big JTL forum thread explode? Do you know offhand what day that was?
Yeah, it was the 31st.
Okay, so
you were already deep in the trough by then.
I can't put my cursor on screen, but and I know the dates are really small. But if you can see that blue line, that's on, like you said, August 27th. So the population was already dipping, and many of you probably know what happened on August 27th. The release
I wonder if anybody knows. I have no idea. I was just like, wow, that's amazing. Why did it drop?
That's such a classic thing to do.
Wow. It's really, I mean, it's a classic problem where you're trying to figure out what a date means, and then you're like, wow, that's amazing, and then you just don't know and you can't figure it out.
Yeah, so that's what was August 27th.
22% of the people went away overnight. And the fascinating thing is, look to the far side. they're all realizing, wow, that game did suck.
So as far as that shrinking,
it's slowly coming back.
That shrinking population is actually quite the opposite. We're seeing a rise in population again.
Yeah, I think so too. It's just fascinating, though. Like everybody, So I just thought it'd be fun to share this with you because people try to tell me that this server's dying or this is happening or that's happening. I had somebody post something the other day like blah, 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 and I just closed the thread. I'm like, you're full of shit. I got the data. I think I was a little bit more polite than that, but not much. And I monitor this stuff. Like that graph is in real time. I get updates every 30 seconds. I have, here, I'll show you something. Let's see if you can see it. You see that up there? You see that monitor up there? Yeah. That is real time. It tracks everything running on Basilisk, the CPU, the RAM, everything's going on. I have the output of the console here. I have all the error logs coming out here. I have a breakdown of all the number of people who have logged in. I have a breakdown of Basilisk, TC Prime, and Nova here. That's in my living room. Don't tell me you know what's going on.
I think the most important thing...
I know what's going on.
Well, besides the fact that the population seems to be on the rise again, I think the most important thing to take from this graph is that the JTL announcement really did not have an impact on the player base. The player base was already down when that happened.
Last time I looked, and the last time I looked, 8% of the people in the forums play the game. So... a huge percentage of people are in the game playing, having fun, or running their bots or whatever the hell they're doing, but they're not in the forums. So I deeply discount that stuff. It doesn't mean I don't listen to everybody in the forums. I hope you can tell by my thoughtfulness when I write.
Oh, absolutely.
I really do care and I listen, but I also, if you notice during the event where we had the load balancing events, anybody that logged in got an email. I wrote that system to send emails to users and annoy them and tell them about the event because, and it was kind of breaking the fourth wall. There was a big discussion. I don't know if it's big. There was a little discussion internally about whether that was a good idea to break the fourth wall, and basically invade the game. I tried to make it a little fun, but, the reality is that I just don't believe that's the way to communicate with people. And so you're going to start seeing things like in-game surveys, event notices. One team had a really great idea. I love they're using the Newsnet terminals for stuff, and they've contributed their code publicly. I don't know that I'll use that. Anyways, I won't say anything out loud. But
no, I think that's a good.
With that.
Okay.
But I'd like to find some ways to immerse people in the game, but still be able to communicate.
Let's segue from that pretty smoothly into events, server-wide events. I know years ago we used to have these massive events where like literally hundreds of people would come out and bring the server to a standstill. We had that stress test a couple months back, which was nice.
That was fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
That. It was a blast, and I want to do more of those. So there's a couple things. Number one, I know that there's at least a couple people who have raised to me both directly and privately some frustrations they've had trying to get some events going. We only have a couple ECs, event coordinators. The ones that we do, it turns out, I don't know why, apparently they have a real life. I'm very disappointed in that. If we could just find some people that didn't have a real life, then maybe we'd have more events.
Okay.
That's one big problem. It's actually the single biggest problem. There was a proposal recently by somebody. I kind of liked the proposal when I read it really quickly. I didn't get a chance to go deep. that came through a channel that we used for that, and it probably kind of didn't get handled because one of our event coordinators was starting a new job, and another one changed shift schedules, and so it's not because staff hate people. It's because we have a very limited amount of time. There's also a dearth of tools. So I've started writing tools like now you can send emails. As an admin, you can spoof people. So like Forelli used this to great joy in an event he ran where he pretended he was I don't remember Grand Moff or somebody, and you can spoof the email and it comes up with
nice.
And I'm trying to make tools to make it easier as a human being to make an event happen, right? And by that I mean you don't need to be a programmer to do it. Forelli is actually slowly becoming a programmer, but the reality is I want to empower a broader set of people to contribute to events.
Good. So how can people that are interested in becoming event coordinators sign up for that, and what kind of process can they expect to go through to be part of the team?
Well, I mean, you go on the forums, there's lots of posts in there. I don't know the exact URL for it, but there's a URL in there for applying. That being said, I'm just going to reiterate what I said. How I got on staff was by doing shit. I did things, right? I built things and made stuff happen, and I was consistent and I was persistent, and over time people were just tired and they gave up and said, fine, we'll make them a red colored name. So, if you feel like you can drive a lot of the event yourself, I see a lot of these cool events that are going on. I love the Jedi Academy event thing. I didn't get to see it yesterday, but I just love the energy behind those things in Duplo's museums and stuff like those kinds of things. If we see those kinds of things happening, and then you say, hey, I want to take it to the next level. Here's a couple suggestions of events I want to do, but I need to be able to spawn an Ackley or do this or that, then you're going to probably find a lot more support from the team rather than just submitting and saying I should be an EC because I'm cool.
Okay. Let's see. What else do we have? This kind of goes back to the Future of Basilisk, possibly using Basilisk to replace Nova as the official TC. It's not really going to help anything, right? Because Nova uses so few resources compared to Basilisk.
Nova's a joke. I could run it on my iPhone.
Yeah. All right. It honestly though, that looks like most of the stuff that I had already written down as pre-notes. Yeah, we did pretty good. Just over 90 minutes.
For an hour and a half. Yeah.
Okay.
So, any questions from live questions that we have in here? I've seen a lot of stuff go by, but I haven't been able to stare at it. I don't know if Sandy found something.
Yeah.
Somebody apparently thinks I look like the bad guy from Rogue One. So secretly, I'm actually a Hollywood actor, but I usually let my hair grow. No, I'm just kidding. I have done some voice work, but no, I'm not the bad guy in Rogue One.
I'm scrolling back. Somebody
ask about the database. The database. I don't know what this means.
Somebody asked a good question previously. I'm trying to. Donations. So. There's a couple things I could ask about donations. Somebody was saying something about giving rewards away in-game to encourage more donations. I think that's getting a little too close to getting past like the non-profit. I don't know. To me, I don't think there's such thing as giving a reward as a donation. To me, that's just a purchase.
Yeah, so the donations thing it's fascinating to me. First of all, I've heard all kinds of rumors about what we do with the donations, and we try to be super transparent. I've seen things. I'm involved deeply in these things, and maybe even more so going into the future. And I personally have donated significant sums of my time and my money to the community. But it's very slippery slope when you start selling things, when you start giving away things, and I think that will be. Very difficult. It opens up a whole slew of things. Pay to play comes to mind. I know there's been some rumors that staff members are selling credits. I want to tell you something. Not on my watch, they're not. We have a credit log. I have built tools that tell us how many credits move from one user to another. Some of you will be having conversations with me soon. We have on Basilisk, we've commented out the /credits command. I tested it this morning just to make sure. I tried to give myself 20 million credits and nothing happened. And then I said, I hate this command, and it just scrolled up in the console. Nothing happens. And I looked at the code just to make sure, but literally it doesn't work. On Basilisk, you can't give yourself credits. It's an admin. Not even TA or I can do it. And
go ahead.
So, but from donations perspective, I think playing the game should be its own reward. I don't know if, do we dare try to want me to show this little clip here I have, or maybe I can, is it better to put it in the chat channel? What's the best way to do this, you think?
Let me see. If you want to do like
let's see how horrible this goes, or do you want to try that?
No, if you want to try the screen share, we can try that.
Yeah, let's try it. What the heck? We're going to try something here. Please stand by. If we go away, come back in. The truth is, I am not Elon Musk. So, unlike Elon, I can't promise everything I launch will work. Let's see if this works here. Let's try it. There we go. Now.
Oh, yeah, that works. Got it.
So if you look at this thing here I'm showing you, it's a little grainy here, and I'm sorry about that. But
I'll try to make it a little bit bigger.
I've had people try to tell me that, it's, what's going on here is that, you announced JTL and therefore the donations are off. The most important thing I want you to look at here is donations have been off since May, really. Maybe even February a little bit if you look at it. Our goal is 2,500. We only hit that in January, and I could go back further if I want to, but I didn't think it was useful for this conversation. The total number of people subscribing month to month is, fluctuates somewhere around 90 individuals. And we get, somewhere between, 68 to 40. You could really see the drop off in the one time. That means somebody just logged in one time in the month and they contributed. And what's fascinating about this to me is that people want to tell me all the things they want me to get done. And meanwhile, 108 people pay for this game.
How many registered users?
Well, there's 300,000 people in the database. My estimate is there's about 5,000. I'm going to go ahead and drop that now. There's about 5,000 people in monthly active users. Is about what I see. I've seen a little trail off here and there, but monthly active accounts is somewhere around 5,000. And because of that, that means less than 0.1% of people actually donate. So, when you complain to me about this game, you complain to me about the server lag, you complain to me about how long it takes for us to get things done, or, just either donate your time or vote with your wallet, one of the two.
But even the donations are just going strictly to server maintenance and upkeep costs. None of you guys see any of that. I think people don't understand that working on a volunteer project, you guys are literally giving your time for free.
It's, I'm not going to announce the number, but everybody knows at one point in the forums, I did a match, and that match is public. If you bother to find the link where it says why I donated today, and if you click there, I think my history will be in there. Yep. And what I did was I told the staff, I said, if we get to 100% of our goal that particular month when all the stuff was hitting the fan, I said I will match, and I matched dollar for dollar the goal.
And thank you for that from the whole community. Thank you for that.
That's not what I want. What I'm trying to point out is that I think we needed that buffer, right? Like we needed, because
we're dipping into it now, aren't we?
Yeah, we're dipping into it hard now, and most people just don't contribute. They just come on the forums and bitch. And by the way, I wanted to say something. Your donations are classically public. If you click around enough in the forums, people can usually find you. There is a way to donate privately if you want to.
Yep.
But when you're on the forums and you say to me, blah, 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 and I donate money for this game, I have a tool that I can click on that immediately tells me what you've donated.
Everybody, we could just go. You can go to somebody's profile on the servers.
No, to be clear, And most of the time, it's bullshit. They haven't donated a penny. So, be careful when you say that to me. It does kind of get under my skin.
There are tiered rewards that the server... I know you have a much more specific number, but anybody can go to somebody's profile, click the little awards tab, and see if they've reached a certain threshold. Exactly. So, yeah.
Yep. Anyways, so enough on donations. Are there other things people want to talk about?
Yeah, I'm going back.
Yeah, nobody should be moaning either way. Yes, I agree.
Snoot asked earlier, would someone who is competent in OOP, PHP, and various DevOps topics be an asset development since PHP is a child language of C++?
Sadly, no. At the moment, all the DevOps, I know this guy that I hang out with, and he's got all that working. And the PHP we have is mostly forms and registration stuff. And I just, at this time, I don't need anybody helping with that stuff. I really need C++ help. Somebody asked about the servers. It's on the forums. All the details were with packet.net. They have been super great.
Pooch, Pooch, there's a link that Lolander shared earlier. I'll see if I can scroll up and find it, that has all the specs for the servers. Yeah,
we run Kubernetes, and everything's in a Docker image, and some of the stuff I'd like to release would be Docker configuration, so you can actually run the server in a Docker very easily and things like that. So I've got a lot of automation. I'm super happy about it. Somebody asked me what server I was on. Flurry. And I was the guild leader of the Trade Federation. Feds was our tag. And it was fascinating because I chose that name, really early on. And then at one point I had a fight with a GM. They thought I shouldn't have a guild called the Trade Federation. And I said, well, the Trade Federation isn't in the game. I mean, they're in the game, but there's nobody playing it. There's no real faction to it and everything else. It's just kind of annoying. And I think it's cool. And we ran a city at the time. We're running a city doing almost 200 million credits a week in sales. And we called the city New Freeport. I mean, we were really focused on being the Trade Federation. We were neutral. We weren't republic. We weren't imperial. Like, I did not put up with bullshit about that inside the guild. We sold guns to both sides, and if you pissed me off, you got banned from my city, and you had to come to me and pay me to get me to unban you. So we were the Trade Federation, and I got to keep it. That was cool. We got to keep the name. They never took it away to the end. We were the Trade Federation.
Nice. Somebody's asking is that the same feds that was on Liberator?
No. Not that I know of. I mean, I wasn't on Liberator.
Let's see. No, there's no time frame for the new server yet.
The city name was New Freeport on Flurry.
Yeah. I think someone wants me to go back and look at the forums. That maybe I missed a suggested question. Actually, I made a promise to ask you a question. This is a very specific question that only a few people will probably care about the answer to, and I'm already pretty sure I know the answer. If an item is destroyed accidentally, is there any way for that item to be recovered from the database? And if so, what kind of a time frame are we looking at?
It takes a couple things. First of all, you have to get up to, is it 88 miles an hour? You need a flux capacitor, and you need to talk to Doc Brown.
Okay. So let me translate. Once something's gone, it's gone.
Yeah, we never really thought of that. Like, really, the way the system's designed, I've actually, because this has come up a couple times. First of all, stop running macros that do default action. That's how you delete your stupid, beautiful, wonderful, legendary sword that had an 80K on it, or hammer, or whatever. The default action is what ends up being a problem. And then the second of all, we have staff members that have come to me and said, please, I can see it on TC Prime. And I'm like, it's nothing I could do. Our systems weren't really designed to even copy objects.
Yeah, so there's no copying or create. Can you create an item?
You can, but you can't get all the attributes exactly the same.
Okay.
And, there's JSON export, and I had originally thought about the JSON export to use for some different things like managing, building, backup, maybe in that way and things like that. But we've never got to the place where we could completely restore an object. We've thought about things like, like transferring the object when you delete it into a zone where it just kind of sits. Like if you remember the Matrix, has anybody seen the Matrix where they go in and all the weapons come sliding by and they're in this empty zone? But I made the joke that we would have a zone where we just put all the old buildings and just drop them in there.
Like a trash bin, like a recycle bin that gets emptied when the server resets.
Yeah, and then you leave it there for a little while. But the truth about trash bins is sooner or later people delete this trash bin and then you still miss your stuff. I've had people come to me and say, I had destroyed and blah, 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 it got deleted and there's a bug in the server. And if there was a bug like that, there would be millions of reports, number one. Number two, please go to TC Prime and tell me. And they're like, it's not even on TC Prime. I'm like, well, then it's been deleted for a long time, right? So even if you had a trash bin for 30-day trash bin or something, I can't promise we'd solve it. So,
all right.
It's a good question, though.
So Ian Blackbird asked on the forums, I'm sorry that I missed it, possible client reimplementation of some kind. If it was ever discussed by the team, Sittner has done some components that could lead to something like a client 2.0 sometime in the future. What do you know about that?
Yeah, there was a Mod the Galaxy team constantly talks about, they mod the client like mad, and they do a lot of really cool stuff to get, HDR graphics and 4K going. None of it, which I've ran. I'm on a shitty old Mac, believe it or not. They do have 3 27-inch monitors, but I am on an old Mac, and I've just never really tried any of their mods. But it just hasn't been a focus of ours. Our focus has been on the server side. I think there is an awkward place where you could trip across, am I using the assets inappropriately? So that's another reason why it's kind of cool. There's really easy to say, there's a network card between me and the server and the client. So it's very easy for me to say, I built this over here and people play with that over there and it works. Whereas, when I start making changes on the client, then you get more and more slippery slope of where does their code end and mine begin.
On that note, sorry if you were still on that.
Go ahead.
Somebody asked on the forums, actually an interesting question. Obviously, we talked briefly a little bit about the legality of using assets contained on the CDs versus, that's not actually on the server. What happens when JTL is finished? Because those JTL assets weren't included on the original client that the project requires people to own. So how does that work?
If you bought the experience, the experience,
right? The total experience did include those, yes.
Yeah, and they gave it away for free at one point.
Okay.
So I don't think that's a big problem. By 14.1, I think it was pretty normal for you to be able to get it. At one point, they'd given up on trying to make JTL a separate thing, which really pissed me off because I paid for it.
Okay.
So, but I don't think it's a big issue.
Mountain Man talking about loot campers. I kind of think we're gonna save that for a future server discussion. I think we're gonna bring you back.
We have loot campers.
We have to have a whole nother discussion. Maybe we can get one of the other devs.
I can talk for hours about that.
Go ahead. You want to say something about loot campers?
No. I'm just saying I could talk for hours about loot campers. We could do a whole talk about it. But yeah, I mean that would be a future thing.
I know Mountain might not have been here before. Lordkator is a big fan of rewarding ATK play. So instead of punishing loot campers, maybe giving bonus loot rates to people that are at the keyboard when they kill, something like that.
Also, I think it's stupid that the mob spawns in exactly the same place every single time, and there's some things like that.
Oh my God, not Hanna-Barbera. Hannah Banana is asking, there's some decoration items on TC Prime, like a fireplace.
I saw that post on the forums. I thought, so I was just having fun with the blue frog on TC Prime and like uncommented like a bazillion things for fun. I'm not even sure how you get that item, or even if it was a thing you could actually craft or get. I just don't know. I tried to look really super fast so I could answer this question because I saw it on the forums. But you'll see that I gave out like special sun visors for people who came to the stress test and things like that. We had talked internally, the devs did, about searching all the objects in the game, because there's actually more objects in the game that are actually referenced.
Yeah.
And then coming up with a dead list, and then using the dead list as a way to add new rewards for different quests. My wife and I, she spent, I don't know, probably a couple weeks going to every single weird outcropping of something random on every single map. And she's made a long list of all these possible places where we might spawn new NPCs or have you go to those places in order to,
that's so cool.
To make a step. I mean, she is crazy.
Like the hot spring on Endor?
Everything, yeah.
I know.
Yeah, there's a hot tub there somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And
it's a well-kept secret.
So we desire. We used to go on date night. She used to force me to go out, and because I wouldn't leave my guild hall, and because I had my crafting tool there, and everybody just brought me all my resources. Why did I ever have to leave? I remember I used to have like horrible armor. I got killed a couple times, and then she finally got me to get real armor and real weapons, and I had to get my skills up and everything. It was really funny. But she would show me all these places that she went to, and now she's got like this list of, I don't remember, it's a lot of different places where she thinks
maps
we could
out
do.
there.
There's
There's maps out there that have all of those little, like a hut, a torch, just things labeled.
And there's a place on, I forget which city it was, or what planet it was. There was a really cool flat plateau kind of thing where you can. There's it looks like somebody, one of the artists was planning to do something, and they did nothing with it. And I was thinking, man, we could just pop a whole, NPC city there that didn't exist before. So
yeah, that's the stuff that's really exciting to me.
That stuff would be fun for me.
Yeah,
right? And that's why I don't want this all to be like just driven from the forums conversation, because there's no secret, there's no mystery. I want there to be some mystery in the game.
We don't need new planets when there's plenty of space that we can make more interesting on the existing planets.
Again, look at the heat maps. There's a reason I did them.
Yeah,
I literally did them because of this conversation. I was like, okay,
I can't wait.
How can we?
I'm ready. Let's wipe it now. Let's wipe it now. Hit the button.
Let's do it.
Let's go.
Front to back. Hang on a second. I'm logging in right now. Exclusive. You saw it here.
All right. All right.
I can do it if you want me to. Be careful.
I'm pretty sure everybody in the chat right now would say yes to that. That's probably enough for now. We're getting close to the 2-hour mark. I'm really surprised how well that worked out timing-wise. So that was really good. This is really the first time that I've done anything like this. Thank you for taking not only today, but we had a huge talk yesterday just to kind of make sure everything was working before today. So I apologize again to your wife for keeping you for so long. In
my profession, I do events like this, and I always do a rehearsal before. So so Mobius had to listen to me dribble on yesterday about stuff. And
totally worth it. Is there anything in the last couple of minutes here you want to say or share, or just reminders or anything like that?
I would just say, it's pretty depressing that 108 people pay the bills. I really encourage people. We're behind now. You can see we're below our contributions. Please contribute. I'm very aware of where these things go and how they're being used, and I'm actually going to take a more active role in some of that stuff going into the future. And I would say, don't get hung up on being on staff. You can contribute to this community without being on staff. Being on staff is not a binary thing. If anything, I think it's a good continuum. I think good staff members actually are great community members that become staff members. So be a great community member. Contribute. Dig in. Be part of this. Yeah. And, as we go into the future, try to be positive. And, if you feel like things aren't working right, you can reach out to me, but I promise I can't make everything right for everybody. So,
and
except for me.
Funkle brings up one last, he asked, can we have some time to save macros before the wipe? You guys have already said there's going to be huge amounts of communication long before Basilisk is ever turned off, if that's what is decided for it, which we discussed in this interview may not be the case. But
what's amazing to me is that I asked for 36 hours to do a bunch of maintenance on Basilisk back in October. And if you didn't know that was coming, I don't know what you were doing in your life. If you got messages when you logged in to the game, you got emails, multiple warnings about it, you got forum messages. Like, can you imagine if that's what I did just for a small 36-hour outage? So,
and you better believe
if we're going to wipe out Basilisk, it's going to be that level. Short of a disaster, it's going to be that level of communication.
You can be damn sure that I will have a video about it as soon as that announcement goes out. So if you're not already following me on YouTube, do that. And that's a perfect way to close this out.
Thanks, everybody.
No, but definitely thank you for coming. I'd love to have you back. We do like a future server idea discussion when we get a little bit closer to 1.0 or something like that. So
yeah, I mean, it'd be fun. It would be fun, you know, as part of my hope that we start releasing some of the thoughts that we have in the community. I'd be happy to engage the community in this in a forum like this. To, you know, why I wanted to do this, I'll close with this, is I really want people to get that we're just human beings back behind that glass.
That's
and when you're banging
a huge
on
part
it,
of why I wanted to do this.
And you're jumping up and down about what we're doing or what we're not getting done and so forth. Like, I've got a cat and a wife and 6 kids and 3 grandkids, and I'm a professional and I have a crazy job. And oh, by the way, I do this, you know, in my spare time. I don't even know what spare time looks like. So just remember that and then just be gentle with each other. Like, we're all in this community together, and we believed in the hope that Star Wars provided in the stories, and we believed in the interconnectedness that was the game and is the game in the community today. And please focus on that. Don't focus on your ego or you know, what somebody else is doing. Focus on that positive side.
Very wise words. Wise words.
Thank you.
All right, thank you guys
everybody.
for everyone coming out, and thank you for making suggestions for interview questions. It was great to see where everyone's heads were at. Yeah, thank you again. That's going to be it for now. Thank you for watching. Mobius1 and Lordkator here, and we'll see you next time.